Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's weekly live InPowered Consent Conversations. And I was going to take you all off camera, but I totally forgot. So stick around with me while I introduce our conversation. And you're still free to share to your own platforms if you would like while I do so. So I am Christina McCabe. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a relationship and sex coach. I love to focus on the erotic blueprints, consent, empowered consent, and helping clients to speak their authentic desires. It is my absolute joy to bring you these empowered consent conversations where we are gathering with sex, intimacy, relationship experts such as these gorgeous people right here to bring you topics to explore, to create consent in your life in a way that really gets you heard, understood, and fulfilled. In these conversations, we are exploring consent with a focus on it being exciting, healing, inspiring, a doorway for deeper intimacy and connection with yourself and others. And today we are gathered to talk about empowered or personal capacity and empowered consent. And I'm joined this week by my gorgeous guest experts, Lady Jean, Fauna Gold, and Isha Vela. I hope I said all your names right. Say hi, everyone.
Hi. Hello.
Welcome. I'm so happy that you're here joining. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. I'm going to invite them to introduce themselves in just a moment more, but first I want all of you watching to take a look at the description above or below if you're on YouTube, and you will find Lady Jin, Fauna Gold, and Isha Velas, as well as my own contact information and the YouTube link to watch past forum replays. Go ahead and subscribe to that so you get notified every time we go live. I have also this week included links to the Consent Academy and to the Wheel of Consent. Both have great resources to help you up-level consent in your life, and I refer to them often in different ways, and particularly the Consent Academy because I did some work with them or some classes with them around personal capacity, and so I really love what they're bringing, and I want you to have those resources as well, so check those out. Also, we love you to be involved, so feel free to ask questions. Make comments via the chat, and I will monitor them to get you heard if I am able. If you leave me a novel as a comment, I probably won't read the entire thing, but I'm really happy that you're participating and love that you're involved. Be sure to stick around to the end if you would like. We do a consensual resource roundtable where if you want to stay and hear what each of these gorgeous people, as well as myself, are doing and how you can work with us, you can hear more then. All right, let's get started. I would love you all to get yourself introduced to our guests. Who would like to start?
I can start.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Hi, so my name is Fauna, and I have been a clinical and somatic herbalist for a decade. And that work really brought my nervous system to a level of healing and personal capacity where I could start to address the childhood trauma that was living in my body. And really, for me, that pleasure has been the through thread through all of it that has kept me engaged with life. And not just sexual pleasure, but pleasure in so many ways of engaging with nature, with plants, with other humans. So I trained to become an erotic blueprints coach after discovering so much about myself from this framework that really opened my nervous system to a level of receiving and embodied pleasure that I never knew was possible. Mm-hmm. So I'm really passionate about creating containers and spaces where people can be their full human selves, where they can explore their relationship to pleasure, and where they can reclaim the parts of themselves that may have been lost or suppressed through experiences where there has not been consent. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation because I do feel very strongly that the way forward for humans is in consensual pleasure with themselves and with the earth in so many ways that we're all beginning to tap into.
Ah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Gorgeous work, Fauna. I'm so happy you're here and to have your voice heard in the conversation. Thanks for
Thank you.
joining.
Thank you.
Okay,
Isha, or Lady Jen, please.
okay, I will go. Hi, I'm Lady Jing, sex and love coach. I transformed my career. I transited my career from a corporate American business management job to be a full-time sex and love coach after I discovered and connected with my sexuality, with my aliveness, with my pleasure. And in that journey, I claimed my voice and fulfillment like no other education has taught me. And I personally went through graduate business educations in the past and numerous trainings, and have done personal development and meditations for a decade before I discovered how important to connect with my sexuality, with my aliveness, and rely on my body and listen to my body wisdom. So that was a very, very big journey for me. And now I'm sharing all the tools and help other people to transform their relationship with their body and pleasure so they can create a relationship and love life they desire.
Yum. Yes. What an incredible journey. And I'm so happy that you're here with us, bringing everything that you've learned in that journey, plus I'm sure a wealth of other knowledge from your life forward to this conversation. Welcome.
Yeah.
Isha?
Thank you, Christina. Thanks for having me here. I'm Isha, trauma psychologist, intimacy alchemist, and sovereignty coach. And I came into intimacy work, it's emotional intimacy, self-intimacy, after having 10 years ago, having a full body breakdown. I had been chronically depressed. I became chronically ill. I was struggling with not wanting to be alive, and healing my intimacy wounds, which is another word for attachment wounding, and rewiring my nervous system through body work, through somatic work, and building a life in alignment with my vision, with pleasure, is the transformation that I offer other people. Basically, really harnessing the full, your full life force. I use somatic expressive techniques to support healers and bridge builders and spiritual entrepreneurs in healing their own intimacy wounds and reclaiming their ancestral power to express their fiercest creative gifts into the world, right? For their own personal sovereignty, but also for their collective good. Yeah.
Yes. Amazing work. Fantastic.
Yeah. And I just wanted to share that the reason I wanted to talk about in empowered consent and personal capacity is because consent and feeling like we're capable of holding opens us up to more playfulness and curiosity and creativity, all of which are necessary for functioning in relationships and in all areas of life.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was going to say the way that you create this, help people in tapping their sovereignty and building that sovereignty, that's so important when we're talking about personal capacity, right?
Absolutely.
There's so many levels of personal capacity that having that ownership of self really applies to. So this is a great conversation for you to join. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, and this is each of your first time in this conversation. Really so happy that you've chosen to join me and each other and our gorgeous viewers. I see you all out there. Some people popping on. We're exploring empowered consent and personal capacity. Love you to be involved. I see a couple loves that got some hearts over there. Please let us know you're here. Send us a comment, ask a question. Let us know what you think personal capacity and empowered consent is as we do this exploration ourselves. So we always start these conversations with asking, what is empowered consent? For while we know what consent is, right? That agreement or lack of agreement to participate in an experience with another. Not everyone knows what empowerment is. And I think that that can be very personal for each of us. So I'd love each of you to let our viewers know and us know what you consider empowered consent to be.
Do we want to go in the same order as we introduced ourselves?
Just play, whoever feels inspired to speak.
Okay. So I can share that for me, empowered consent is consent that is deeply connected to the truth in your body, right? That it's clean, it's free of fear. It is connected to your sense of safety within yourself. It's a yes, right? It's an enthusiastic yes that's free of story and free from the fear of loss, right? Because that's where we most often self-betray, is in when we fear losing the relationship. We fear losing love, or we fear losing the connection with somebody else. Yeah, that sense of trust, and the consent is offered from the trust and safety that lives inside of you. So in other words, it's responsive versus reactive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Responsive rather than reactive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Fauna, Lady Jen.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay. I stuck with the middle one.
Take it.
I will. Yeah, thank you. I love the Isha's answer. So for me, empowered consent. The base of empowered consent is self-trust. That the self-trust is coming from like, I trust, I'm safe. I trust I can speak up how I feel, and I trust this is a true answer to myself at this moment. So I feel that's a very good, important foundation whenever that, because how my answer is will change, depends on the situation, depends on the context. But if I can sense that self-trust inside of me, and then I'm able to be connect to the truth at that moment. And the first. The second, I feel it's very important that the empowered consent is based on what I need at this moment. You know, for example, at certain circumstance, or it depends on how I feel physically or emotionally, I may need more safety than play. And another time, I may want to be more adventurous than playing safe. And that's all valid. But empowered consent is really have that connection with my inner self. What do I value more? What my mind and body, the alignment needs at the moment, and give it a voice. Yeah. So it's very fluid for me, and it's always tuning into my inner resource and my self-trust moment by moment, and go from there.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. That inner knowing, that inner trust, that fluidity to be able to allow yourself to really choose from the place that deeply serves you now, not necessarily yesterday or tomorrow, but right now, what in this moment would serve me most. Beautiful. Thank you. Anna.
yes, I love what you both are saying about trusting the self and tuning into, you know, the alignment between body and mind. One thing that's really shifted with me in, you know, having so many early ruptures of trust was like, what can I trust? Can I even trust my emotions? Right? Is my guidance system on? And coming home to the fact that like my body can't lie to me. Like my body doesn't lie, and that it's just it's like a muscle to be built over time to be able to tune in and track what's happening internally, and then be able to also stay connected if I'm having an experience with another person. And one of the things that I would add to this definition of consent is that I practice consent with myself in my experiences of self-pleasure. And there was a lot when I started doing that practice of like, oh, wow, that was way faster than even I was ready for. And there was some part of me that wanted things to go faster, or maybe, you know, my sexual blueprint, which we might get into, you know, wanted to rush to something that the other parts of me weren't ready for. And so I also think of consent being an internal process of alignment, and really getting into the resonance of what does a yes feel like in my body. So, yeah.
Gorgeous. I'm writing down internal process of alignment. I just love that. For those of you that have been watching these for a while, go back through, scroll through. Actually, I promised you all that I was going to post this and I totally forgot. Sorry about that, but I will repost. A little while ago, we've done a couple of these conversations where we really dove into how to feel into what a celebrated yes and a celebrated no versus a contracted yes or a contracted no, when a maybe I need more information, what those felt like in our bodies. And so we've done those in past conversations, and I will go through and reshare it so you all get the tools and tips from that, as well as if you want to work with a coach. A lot of these somatic embodiment-based coaches can help you to really dive into what that inner knowing that we're all talking about feels like in our bodies. And that it's a common thread, this inner knowing, through all of these conversations, every intimacy, relationship, business, physician, medical expert that I've had on here. That inner knowing, that connection to our inner selves on that embodied level is the thread that goes through all of it. I always, and you'll hear me say this every time, because I really do believe that we also need to have the ability to emotionally regulate so we can celebrate another person's authentic truth when they give it to us as well. Because consent, besides just with us, so my consent with myself, I have to look at what could be influencing me, the shoulds, rather than what I really want to be doing, right? Rushing forward instead of sitting back, the shoulds. Or if I'm having consent with somebody else, or it's a conversation between two people often. So am I able to put aside my agenda and be emotionally regulated and supportive of another person if I'm asking them for consent and they say no, or they say yes, or they say I need more information? So I feel like that ability to really hold a space not only for ourselves and our own inner knowing, but hold the space for others and their inner knowing, and celebrate it. So we heal those wounds where it wasn't celebrated, and we build those trusts with ourselves and others. So the consent does become easier, more empowered, more accessible, this doorway we're talking about, right? Yeah, so I always like to add that in as well. What is personal capacity? And that's a topic we're here, and I think a lot of people wonder, what really does that mean? What is personal capacity?
I can start with that. I mean, one thing that I'm sure Isha will have a lot to say about is like nervous system regulation, the zone or the window of tolerance, in the place in which we learn to dwell, from which we can make sound decisions, where there's enough regulation that we're on board. The part of us that the prefrontal cortex can be part of the decision. I also think a lot about personal capacity as it's also a relational field. Like we're managing our own nervous systems, but we're also so affected by the people that we're with, and the environments around us. And sort of in an animist sense, like we're fields of communities. And so I guess I didn't expect to say that. I don't know where that's going exactly. So I'm putting it a star by that, because when I initially thought of that question, I thought like, well, it's just me and my body. But when we're in a room with other nervous systems, our heart field is affecting each other, and we become a sort of one organism in certain ways, but we also then still have the power to self-regulate. So it feels like a dance, like it's both a personal and an interpersonal thing at all times. And like, even if we're alone in our room, like we're part of a larger field of human experience.
Collective consciousness.
Yeah, that goes back to, you know, Isha's work around personal empowerment and also collective good. Like, I think the question of personal capacity is also so much about how, if we can really hold and tend to ourselves, then we become more able to receive another being in what they're experiencing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, for me, this work is social work. It's social justice work. This, right? Not only pleasure, not only amazing sex lives, but consent and using our voices authentically, developing our personal capacity, because then we do have that ability to show up for not only ourselves, but our communities, our families, the world around us with that higher one.
Yeah.
So love it. Yum.
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to add to what Fauna said, because I thought they said that really well about like this piece around community mapping, you know, and like for me, you know, like personal capacity is like the sense of inner groundedness based on self-knowledge, right? But when we think about groundedness, like it is a relational field. There are like, you know, matrices of energy, like in groups of people that we are affected by. And when we're in a room, let's say, full of ungrounded people, we're going to be affected by that. And it's going to be harder for us to access that place that feels really grounded, very like in the body, safe in the body. So there's that collective piece. And what I wanted to say about inner knowledge or self-knowledge is that, you know, when I work with people, you know, people think they know themselves. And I certainly thought that I knew myself after having graduated from, you know, doctoral level psychology degree. But then when I came into my 4-year somatics program, I realized I didn't know anything about myself, because what was coming out of my body was absolutely foreign. It was like trauma that I had never named as trauma. I would have never called myself a trauma survivor. And yet my body was vomiting all of this old historical stuff that maybe didn't even begin with me, that was ancestral. But, you know, so it's like when I talk about like the nervous system being able to hold all parts of the self, that includes our woundedness, that includes our higher self gifts or our purpose, or, you know, our shadow aspects. And a lot of people aren't familiar with the shadow, and even if they are able to identify it, they're not able to really like know it, like have a relationship with it. You know, so that's a whole another level of relating to the self and having self-knowledge.
Right. And when
Makes sense.
we talk about personal capacity, that ability to witness self on
Yes.
so many levels, I think, is what I hear you saying. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a mindfulness kind of a thing too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not always living in this amazing space, right? I mean, we're
Right.
influenced internally and externally by so many components. So that
Right.
capacity is that ability to witness what
Yeah.
is influencing us, either internally or externally, and then have, because of that awareness and witnessing, then we can make choice from
Right.
that.
Right.
And that place, that's where then we can move into consent.
Yeah. And the witnessing is for me like a very specific energetic experience, right? When there's a witnessing that is just sort of like you're hovering above and you're looking sort of in, but there's a different level of it when you're in interrelation with the thing that you're witnessing, right? When there is compassion, there's presence. Like, for example, I was at an event last night where, Fauna was saying earlier, like, there's parts that want to go fast, right? There's blueprints that want to go fast. And it's like in that process, young parts of ourself get steamrolled. Like, let's say the part that wants to go fast is the teenager, right? And the teenager is just like, yeah, let's go. And, your 4 to 6 year old is like, wait, I need to go really slow. And the teenager is like, fuck off. I don't want to go slow. Right. And so these inner aspects of ourselves are in relationship to one another. Right. So there's the interrelatedness piece, not just the witnessing, but then there is this whole conversation that happens within the body, right? With sensations and experiences and aspects.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'd love to get Lady Jin's understanding of what is personal capacity as well into this conversation.
Yes. Yeah. I enjoy the conversation so much because I resonate very much with other guest speakers as well as you, Christina, just said. Just had a flashback on so many similar events or experience I have had. What I would like to add also deeply resonate with my personal experience is personal capacity shows up in our presence all the time. Like if at beginning, like when people ask me, how can I improve, improve my ability to speak up, improve to ask for what I want. And the fundamental piece I will ask people to track is track your presence. Are you checking out? Like it can be a joint, it can be a reason from internal, something triggered internally or external pressure or influence. But just checking, are you losing your presence? How present are you with your thought, with your body language? And are you losing it? And first, we don't have to do much about it. Just to notice, do you have your presence is already a big improvement because that's not something I have learned in my education in school, right? We keep absorbing information outside or absorbing people's opinions or what we want, what our mind wants us to do, to achieve. But we forgot to check in. Am I present while I'm doing what I want to do? It's coming from the internal, like I want to rush into something, or I really is from my body wants to do it, right? And next is really to be present with many different emotions and triggers or influence points can coexist. So when we increase our awareness, we're able to track, what are the actors or actress on the stage right now are playing, right? And we don't have to lose our focus, but we notice things are coexisting. So for me, that's really over time practice. I've noticed, am I losing my presence? And what is going on in my body? And I want to use an example is, it's almost like, when I was in business meeting, right? Oftentimes I would notice myself or other people will lose our focus, but physically we have to be there because we signed up for the meeting, we need to be there. But mentally, I probably have checked out. However, okay, glad none of you were my former boss. Okay, but just imagine if we do not have that mindfulness or awareness in our relationship, because there's no boss there. We're in together with someone in a relationship. If we do not pay attention to our presence and we constantly check out, we're constantly doing or saying things that we don't feel aligned in our body. And there's a consequence. We're out of alignment with our personal capacity or inner alignment. Yeah. So
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, that sense of presence. So important to implement any of the things that we've been talking about here with this awareness of self and where am I right now in my capacity to give consent. And I want to throw it out there too to our viewers that to some it may sound like this sounds pretty complicated, personal capacity, but we are, being in and out of capacity could be even so simple as I'm hungry, I'm really tired, right? I'm grieving, I'm really irritable. I'm not in a place to really make decisions that are going to benefit or are going to represent what my true desires or my authentic voice is, what I really want in this moment. Right? If I can get real hangry, y'all, if I'm not eating when my body needs it and I'm really tired as well, and I'm all up hangry, I'm not going to have that presence. I'm not going to have that self-witnessing because I need to eat some food, right? So it can be just as simple as taking care of our bodies. And it's not all also personal. It's also, there's so many dynamics such as social structures, power dynamics. There's things such as disabilities or cognitive traumas or accidents or illnesses. There's so many things that can impact our ability to really be in capacity, right? And the Consent Academy says that personal capacity with consent is, does everyone have the ability to give and receive authentic, honest, clear, and unobstructed answers without undue influence? Yeah. Yum. So what do you want our viewers to know about empowered consent, this inner knowing, this trusting of self that we're talking about that we need in order to give consent, and personal capacity?
You go ahead, Jen.
Okay. Okay. My answer will be simple and direct. First thing I will want people to know is give yourself permission to slow down.
Love that.
And when you slow down, you're able to feel more. You're able to evaluate if this is what I need and if this is what I want to say. And are you saying or doing something out of inner alignment or out of fear or any other external pressure or social conditioning? Slow down. This is simple but so powerful to notice what's going on in your body and also notice what's going on with other people. And give yourself the permission. Ask for it. Say, hey, can I take a 30 seconds or 1 minute break? Something like that.
Yeah. Such a fan of that. Beautiful. Thank you. I think that's one of my number one tools. Slow down, take a breath, pause. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to share that, what I want viewers to know is that in matters of consent, whether or not it's sexual, we often betray ourselves or we give ourselves over in subtle and obvious ways because we fear losing the connection. And that, I firmly believe that we have to heal our attachment traumas or intimacy wounds in order to offer true, enthusiastic, and sovereign consent. And Christina, you said something about systems, right? And about like sovereignty occurring like on a physical level, emotional, energetic, spiritual, right? Like we have to check into all of those parts of ourselves. And yes, like Jen said, slowing down and being in relationship and then giving ourselves permission to ask for what we need. Many of the people that I work with are not in touch with their need because they're helpers and healers in the world, right? So they're often helping other people. So to really be in touch with need and to not shame our need, to not shame the parts that need more time, right? Because we have a tendency to make ourselves wrong and say that we're too sensitive or we're too this, right? And so we often don't give ourselves that permission. So permission, you get to have it your way.
Mm. And how does it, you're saying, I think, Isha, that permission giving, that slowing down, that's going to help us, that honoring of self, that's going to help us have the capacity to give true, authentic consent.
Absolutely. Yeah, because we have to be able to track what is it that's happening in the nervous system. Am I afraid of losing the connection in this moment? Am I in danger of self-betraying? And then I have to be able to pause and sort of bring myself back, ground, and say, I am safe, or, whatever you tell yourself, or resource in some way, co-regulate or regulate your nervous system so that you can then, right, offer the consent.
Love that. I want to just piggyback on that just a little bit, that, we are wired to connect. We tend to be actually either wired to connect or protect, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
we're not honoring our consent because we're afraid of not connecting. We're protecting that connection, or we're not honoring our consent because it's never been safe to.
Yes.
Right? So we're either protecting ourselves, defending ourselves, or trying to connect, right? With others or with ourselves. And so our consent is often about one or more or all of those things, depending on what's happening for us in that moment.
Absolutely.
And I would offer that we need to check in first and make sure that connection and protection is of self first, and then therefore connection and protection with others.
Absolutely. Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. Fauna, what do you want people to know about empowered consent and personal capacity?
Well, it's a beautiful transition right there, because what comes up for me is, yes, self first. That personal capacity is our personal responsibility. And the way that has shifted massively in my life was through a daily self-pleasure practice. And in that time and space that I take for myself, I'm really checking in, like before I even touch myself, I'm checking in with the parts that tend to need a lot of holding and care. Right? And it becomes an emotional alchemy process. And by doing that and attending to that regularly, my personal capacity has built, it feels sometimes like this big golden egg that I've crafted for myself. And so I had so many concerns my whole life of boundaries. How do I I'm getting catcalled on the street, and how do I'm ready to fight all the time. I was, that was one way that I started to mobilize my fight response, was okay, well, F that, that's not okay. But what I've been discovering, going deeper and deeper in this daily practice with myself, is that my pleasure becomes the boundary, because I'm so full in my nervous system. I know that I got myself, I'm holding myself, I'm, through all the waves of being human, right? And also I would say it doesn't look like sex at all, necessarily. Self-pleasure can be a lot of things. It can be movement. It can be, listening to music and just feeling the music. There's so many ways to be in a very intimate experience with ourselves. And so that's something I'm really passionate about folks developing skill around. And it also means that we start to just give from overflow and connect from overflow. And so in that way, each is speaking about our fear of loss of connection. One, I'm really solid, in the connection with myself. And then two, I'm not connecting from a place of I need you to fill up my cup. Right. So when my nervous system's overflowing, I'm feeling alive and fed, then that shifts how I come to relationship. And then it becomes much easier to feel my clear yes or no. So that's the piece that I want people to know about, is the magic of a self-pleasure practice that actually opens your nervous system into capacity.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. And do you all see all this softness all around me? All this softness. That's part of my self pleasure, right? I just do it all day. All day, I'm surrounding myself with things that bring me pleasure, that let my system know that I'm good right now. This is nice. Yeah, where I step out of the spin, whatever story, and into pleasure for moments. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we've already mentioned a few things that can stand between us and personal capacity, right? And how important capacity is to give consent. It's really crucial. You have to have personal capacity to really give empowered consent. So, what is standing in the way? What are some of the more common things that can unduly influence our personal capacity? You want our viewers to be aware of, to watch for, pay attention to.
I can share a situation that happened yesterday where, I was a guest at somebody's house and there was something that happened that I didn't like. And there was a part of me that was concerned that I was being impolite by setting this boundary. Right.
Right?
So all of our
Oh,
social conditioning around,
yes.
you can't say that. That wouldn't be nice, right? Like all of this piece there. And, I said it anyway. And I was aware of in my body of like, feeling like a bitch, right? For example, and still giving myself permission, but noticing that story or that tape running in the background,
Mm.
but like, yeah, so the social conditioning, obviously trauma of all sorts, all kinds,
Social norms, social
yeah.
constructs.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Not only in present moment, but what ways have the social norms defined us and how we express ourselves
that's right.
over the course of our life.
Yeah, yeah, and that
Yeah,
involves culture too, obviously.
of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. What
Yeah,
else? What else is getting in the way? Oh, go ahead, Fauna.
I just want to give a slightly similar lens. Kasia Urbaniak in Unbound, A Woman's Guide to Power, talks about the good girl double bind, where, to ask either in making an ask or in setting a boundary, you don't want to be perceived as a bitch by saying no. But you also don't want to be like needy and weak and like have needs. And the freeze, there's a freeze response that happens in the body, which is very much like it's when it's happened to me, it's so frustrating to know that like I would like to have something different happening in this relational context, and I'm not able to do that. And so sort of practicing and role playing those moments is something that she works a lot with in that book, is like having those moments and putting the attention back out on the person. If it's like an inappropriate question that comes out, like ask a question back. And so these are things, these are skills. These are skills that we can learn and like rewire in the body. But I'm also really passionate just about movement and like lifting heavy things. Powerlifting for me has been huge. Like if someone's nervous system tends to be parasympathetic dominant, they tend to go into a frozen state. Regularly mobilizing that and doing things that are hard and scary, like just tones the nervous system over time. And that's been like just a huge shift. Like if I need to suddenly meet an experience with a strong no, like that just happens organically now. But there was just a lot of things that had to be felt. The just charge accumulated in my body from all the times that I didn't say no and I wasn't safe enough. Or I didn't ask for what I wanted, and then like that impacted a connection. So yeah, it's like internal. I guess these these are skills and reflexes that we can just over time work with.
Yes. I love that, because as I was, the whole week before, I'm like marinating in our topic, right? I'm just growing and marinating, exploring, and it feels like personal capacity is a muscle we can build on so many
Absolutely.
levels. There's areas that we can't, where we make choices, or maybe we've had injuries or accidents that are limiting our personal capacity, but then we're going to do what we can within that context, right? Or there may be power dynamics, but there's still areas where we can find our choice. So it feels like this muscle that we can build. And you mentioned, Fauna, expressing yourself in safe-ish areas, safer places that feel the easiest to do first. And that really helps us to build the resilience, and that powerlifting, right? That's building your resilience. And so I offer that as well to our viewers, that there are so many ways to build resilience that may resonate for different people. Are going to want to power lift, and others are going to want to do breath work, and others may like some cold showers, or others are going to edge sexually or do pleasure practices in different levels. So finding things that work for you to build your resilience so you can meet those challenging times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, what Fana said about movement. Yeah, movement, breath, and vocalizations. Those are the basics of embodiment. It's simple, and yet, bringing it into practice is intentional. You have to have the sort of the awareness. Like, I love what Fana said about toning, right? Like, it is exercise. It is a practice, a way of attending to yourself. Like that, the attending alone sends such a powerful message to the body of like, I'm here for you. I got you. I love you. That in itself energetically builds the body as well.
Beautiful. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. What else is getting in the way?
I can add something.
Yeah,
so
please.
I love the examples you just gave about toning our muscle, emotional muscle or physical muscle, right? And I have done that. I'm going to share at the end of my sharing. So what I want to add is just mention a little bit about culture, but it has a real huge influence about being different, like afraid of being different.
Yes.
So I'm coming from the culture, like I grew up in China. So it's very much people advocate for be modest. Don't stand up too high because you want to respect other people, right? Being the average actually is good, or being a champion but secretly, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, like very secret. Be modest. Even you have a big achievement, when people all give you a compliment. When I grew up, what we learned to say to compliment is, that's I don't deserve it. I'm just lucky. That's how my teachers and my parents taught me to respond. But instead, now I just say thank you, right? It's just take me such a long time to retrain my initial response, right? Shift from, no, I'm just lucky, to thank you. So looks very easy, but that shift instantly was not easy at all. So we definitely have the barrier in our culture, depends on where we grew up, right? It has a huge influence. I feel the underneath for that is we're afraid of being alone. Because
that connection, right?
Yeah, if we are unique, if we are different than my peers, I will be alone. I will lose all the connection. Meanwhile, I haven't found my tribe yet, my new tribe yet. Right? So I have seen this often, and also happened to me as well, when I feel I need a new tribe and environment and society to keep practicing my new learned awareness, my consent conversation, while I'm looking for that community. Meanwhile, I still have some connection with my old or existing community, but I consciously forming my next one so that I can continuously support myself and soften the gap. Soften the gap of, oh my God, what I'm doing, I'm just being alone. So in that case, I may find a professional support. I'm my coach, my mentor, and meanwhile, I'm forming my new tribe so that I experience less shock in my nervous system possible. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yes, the way that culture impacts, right? Yeah, and you gave such a gorgeous example from your culture, how that impacts. And I think even some of the things we were talking about recently, Isha's example of being at a social gathering and not wanting to speak up, that's a very social norm in my world as well, in my communities. So what is the danger of bypassing our consent? What is the danger of giving consent when we're out of capacity? What's wrong with that?
Well, I'll keep sharing from
No, let's get it.
my earlier example. I found myself, I didn't trust myself. So I would say that's the first thing I hated when I out of alignment, when I was not in consent with myself, because I couldn't trust my answer. And even when my ask was met with yes, I didn't really feel that much excitement or joy, because I'm doubting myself, like, is this what really want? And then what's wrong with me? Because I ask for what I want. I think I asked, but I was not happy when I got it. So what's wrong with me? That's a spiral, effect, and make me doubting myself more. And that really impacted the relationship with my own, my inner connection, my inner trust.
Yeah, violating your personal consent created an inner turmoil.
Yes.
And it sounds like kind of a shame spiral of what's wrong with me. Why am I not able to? Right. And then that just spirals into more lack of self-trust, more lack of personal connection with self, and lowered capacity then. Right? This is, a domino effect with that, it sounds like. Yeah.
And externally, I didn't allow others to really support me. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to add to that because and this is speaking from my personal experience, that giving over consent from a place of not having personal capacity, or not speaking up for yourself is a deep form of self-betrayal. It's a self-abandonment. And when we abandon ourselves, we send a powerful message to our bodies, and we are in a process of re-injuring ourselves in the same ways that we might have been abandoned, or we might have felt abandoned as children. And my work in somatics is in the life force and energy. And so you are sending a powerful message to the body energetically, and you are sending a message of you're not worth it, or I don't love you, or whatever, right? And the body receives that, And there's something in the energy field that begins to break down. And then we wonder, like, why we don't trust ourselves, like why we ruminate, or we have all of these experiences, or, in my case, why I got ill. There are many biological reasons why I got ill, medical reasons, but I trust that some of them were energetic because I was in a deep self-betrayal.
Same.
And so, yeah, people actually get sick.
Yeah, I'm a cancer survivor.
Yeah.
And I intuitively knew that that was a direct result of my constant self-attack.
Yeah.
My entire life. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about what happens when we've talked about connection, right? How we're giving consent or not giving it, or giving it out of capacity when we don't want to. What about our ability to really connect with others? It is a human, we are wired biologically to connect, right? Primally, we are safer when we are connected, when we are in community as humans, right? So how is it impacting our ability to connect with others when we are giving consent out of capacity?
Yeah. One thing that I've sort of deconstructed is this cultural story that was given to me that if I sacrifice myself for others, that's good for them. That somehow that can ever actually serve another being.
Right.
And it's a fucking lie, because what the best gift that I can give to anyone and to life is my full aliveness. That's like
Yes.
that's all that life wants from us, right? That's what I truly believe, is like that our pleasure, our presence, is what serves someone the best, even if that means that we're a no to them, or we're a no to this moment with their ask.
Yeah.
And that it's like an inter-sovereignty, right? Like I trust myself enough to say no, and I also trust the other person to receive my no, if that's what's authentic and alive in this moment. We're not giving the other person the chance to show their own strength in ever receiving a no. And we've all seen like the victim triangle of trying to rescue, and then emptying your cup, and then getting drained and resentful, and then that actually damages the connection. So it's just like having enough trust in the relational field to honor personal capacity. So just detangling that, like codependent sort of enmeshed, like, well, I'll sacrifice myself and my truth for you, and then you should do the same. And at some point that dynamic's going to break, as it definitely did enough times in my life where I'm like, okay, that's not working. It just doesn't work. Yeah.
Well, and the level of intimacy, the level of connection that can be achieved between two people who are violating their own consent over and over and over and over with each other, because they've built their relationship upon not ever speaking their truths to each other. The level of intimacy they can reach is just bottomed out.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't move up with that, right? And so it impacts our ability to connect. And that's just not only in intimate sexual relationships. That's with our children. That's with our close family members, our siblings, our community members. What we can have with each other, if we are not giving our true consent, is so limited. It's so limited.
Yeah, it's like the hose of aliveness. We're just like, well, let me just squeeze that and then try and make do. Whereas the sort of miracles that are possible when we like really say yes to our aliveness and our presence and pleasure, it's like there's no going back once you can like live in that for even a little while. It's like, oh well, that's too bad, because now I'm beholden to a new energetic minimum of what I will create in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always cycling, so I'm going up and down all the time, but I'm in awareness of it, so I keep my capacity where I need it to be.
Right. Yeah.
But Yeah, there was something there I was going to say that felt really exciting, but I lost it, so it must not be the moment for it. Let's keep going. Where can we go with this that feels accessible? Because I think for some of our viewers, it might sound like a lot of work what we're talking about, right? We've talked about how giving consent out of capacity can really block our ability to connect, can really unduly influence our connection with ourselves, right? What's possible? I think we're just tiny bit touching on it in my last comments, but what's possible when we do begin to relate from capacity?
I really believe in changing culture through our individual relationships, like with our relationship to ourselves and in our relationships with other people, be it friends, lovers, partners, or even our parents. When we fully own our yeses and our nos, we change culture.
Mm.
When we ask for what we need, we are shifting the paradigm. It's powerful, powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, I want people to know that when like their work is really connected to this bigger collective, right? This bigger flow, this bigger picture of what's happening. Yeah.
Thank you.
Beautiful. I would say starting with small tasks, starting with neutral things, maybe less charge, like less hard to ourselves. I like to use the example of how would you ask for a tea? Like how would you like your black tea to be made? Be specific. And when I threw that question, I said, well, I just like tea rather than coffee. I said, then keep asking, how much milk do you want? How much sugar do you want? Is a medium heat or a really hot tea? So usually people will feel like, oh, okay, I can do that. All right, then apply that same principle to other things.
Yeah.
And then just do it, add it gradually. I feel that will create more ease when people start adopting the idea, oh, I need to be specific in what I want and be true to myself. That's the example. I can do that. Or you can apply that to workout, right? Anything that you feel can be neutral in your life, and start to be more specific and ask ourselves, how can I bring more pleasure while doing this? How can I help people to support me with ease? Yeah. And especially for folks which may feel, oh, it's such a charge or tension around intimacy. If I start asking for what I want in the bedroom, I don't know how to do that. And, okay, start with your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and if you don't know how to do it, you are not alone.
Yeah, exactly.
I talk to so many people because y'all know I love to get people heard in their intimate lives. And the majority of the people I talk to are not speaking their truth. I mean, let that land for a minute. Think about that, y'all viewers out there. Most people are not saying what they really want sexually.
No, I mean, this is like, thousands of years of oppression.
Yes.
Well, and here's what I find too, and I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off, Isha. I just feel like a passion for a second, so I want to say it. And this is not victim blaming. There's no victim blaming here at all. But if you are not saying what you don't want, or you're not saying what you do want, and then you're not, okay, let me rewind and calm because I got all excited. I often hear people say, if only they would do this, I would be fulfilled. If only they would do this, I would be fulfilled. And I say, well, have you asked them? Well, no, they should just know. And they're blaming their lover, their partner, whoever it is, for not giving them what they should know that they want, what they think they should want. And so we end up not asking for what we want, or giving more of ourselves than we desire to somebody, and then blaming that person instead of taking ownership and sovereignty of that we have either not asked for what we really want, or we said yes to things we don't want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we have to look at, I often bring in the systems piece because I want to normalize people's individual experiences of like how desire has been made so wrong, right? It has been made wrong. We're not allowed to want, right? This is generational. The denial of needs is also generational. And so the people who are alive now are carrying such a big load of ancestral trauma, and we often we're saddled with it, and we don't often realize that this is like this this is bigger. This is bigger than us. And I often want to normalize that for clients, is like, this is the shaming of desire, or the desire being made wrong is steeped in sort of a religious conditioning. And I want people to understand that this has historical roots, and roots in collective trauma. And that we can give ourselves, when we understand that, we can give ourselves a little bit more permission. It's like, we often sort of like, oh, why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? Well, it didn't start with you. And it doesn't end with you. And so I feel like that gives people permission to say like, oh, I can own this. This is good. Desire is good. I can ask for this. This is okay.
Yeah. And it's okay if you're not desiring in the moment, right?
Right.
Maybe you're resting. Maybe you're healing. Yeah. Wherever you are is good when we tap into where we authentically are.
Yeah.
What opens for ourselves with connection with others too is just so much more.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. So I love getting our viewers tools and tips. And I think we've offered some here, this resilience building that you all have talked about, this starting in safe-ish spaces and neutral spaces to begin to express ourselves. What are we not saying that we need to say to make building our capacity so that we can be present in our consent and our relationships more on a way that is really getting us fulfilled, right? So what are some more accessible tools and tips that we can offer our viewers to help build capacity to be present with our consent?
I have one that we haven't touched on as much.
Yay.
We've been speaking a lot about, about the body and like the sort of the alchemy of all of this, right? And one thing that has been really paradigm shifting for me is recognizing my own capacity to choose thoughts that feel better. And so I was having some craniosacral body work the other night, and I experienced this block that usually happens right here in my third eye. And I was like, oh, this is ancestral, like witch burnings and like my German ancestry. And I was like all in the, like, how do I alchemize this? And like feeling really put upon. But again, here is this block in my energy that I like, because I've been doing a lot of choice and practicing my choice, because I think most thoughts can be, they can be delusional thoughts of possibility, as one of my mentors says, or they can be delusional thoughts of fear. Like we could just choose to think thoughts that feel better and see and just treat it as an experiment, like what happens. And so I did that in that moment. And I said, what if this just gets to be gone?
Yeah.
And I'm like giving it back to the earth to compost. And I'm now choosing that like this part of my body gets to be part of my energetic system. And I'm not afraid of being a channel or oracle or seer. And that's just how it gets to be now. And so I think that's one of the, there's the risk of bypassing or whatever. And also it's part of my sovereignty that I can choose, like, what if consent for me just gets to be how I live? That I'm in consent in my relationships.
Yes.
And that like when I feel that, like I feel my breast lighting up. I'm like, there's warmth. And
Yeah.
so I just bring some of that possibility into the, like, I know we can focus on like the weight of all that we are alchemizing in this time in our culture.
Yeah.
But I think there's magic in mindset as well, that like, what if this is just how we get to be now as humans, that we're changing this legacy. So
Yes.
yeah.
I absolutely love that. Thank you. Sometimes we get to slow down, we simplify, we choose. Yeah, we can see it and release it. We don't have to marinate and dive in and roll around and create a stew out of all of it all the time. Oh my God.
No, there's such pleasure. There's such
fucking work.
pleasure. There's such pleasure and expansion. I feel like so grateful to be here alive at this time, offering this work and doing this work myself. Like there is so much pleasure in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Yeah. And
And
just go ahead.
no, please, Isha, go ahead.
No, I feel complete.
I said we didn't really touch on things like substances. We didn't touch on we touched on some emotional stuff for sure, some nervous system stuff, but we didn't touch on a lot about physical health. We didn't touch a lot about digestion or microbiome. We didn't touch around a lot, go deeply into cognition. I mean, there's so many things that can influence our capacity, so I think just really gently, lovingly, kindly bringing in an awareness to what is influencing us, right? And then making choices in really accessible, like Lady Jen said, really small areas to really begin to just gain that sovereignty, to gain ownership. What we don't own owns us, right? All the triggers, all the influencers, the social norms, the culture, whatever it is, if we don't begin to take ownership of us, that sovereignty, then it owns us. So gaining capacity means beginning to take ownership, but do it sweetly, do it softly, make it pleasurable.
Yeah. The way that I work with people is through expressive somatics. And so, sometimes, people come into a session and they're feeling angry about something that happened just before the session. And I said, okay, so let's move the energy of that. And so sometimes we'll have them hit a mattress or something, and to bring it into expression, and allowing oneself to feel the full range of one's emotions builds capacity, because we're often afraid, we often contain a lot emotionally. And so when we let ourselves have the full range, we're like, oh, that's a big expression. I can hold that big expression. I'm here with it and I'm having a relationship with it. The same goes for grief. The same goes for fear. The same goes for rage, right? All of those things, when they're brought to expression and when we allow ourselves to feel them, let them run through our bodies, that is another way to build capacity. And there's pleasure in the expression, because we are expressive beings, right?
Yeah.
But we learn to shut it down. We learn to sort of mask. We learn to be polite and contained. But like, what if we just flowed with our impulses? Yeah,
Beautiful.
that's juicy.
Yeah, super juicy. Yummy. So we're getting close to the end of our conversation. It's amazing how fast it goes, right? We've just barely scratched the surface of this. What a joy. It's been so fun to have this conversation and this flow with all of you. Before we move into our resource roundtable, I wanted to see if there's anything that was said today that you feel like you want to underline and enhance, or something that wasn't said that you feel like needs to be said in this conversation around empowered consent and personal capacity before we move forward to the resource roundtable.
I want to say one thing is, whoever is listening and whoever feel like it's very hard process, you're not alone, and you don't have to do it by yourself. Yeah. You can find support, you can find a community, as long as you have the desire to embody your consent and increase your personal capacity, you can find support and a peer.
Gorgeous. Thank you. Yeah.
I just want to highlight how pleasurable it can be to be in consensual experience with self and with other. Like asking for what you want and having that met, like, and going to the edges of that, like, is, I don't know, it just makes life worth living. So it's like, it's so worth it. It's so worth it to alchemize and do the reps and everything, and like be in the place where you can like meet life. It's so worthwhile.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And to add to that, when we feel safe in our bodies, like we often try to create safety in ways that are not helpful. But when we are truly able to access safety, we can also surrender. And I think that's, Fauna, that's what you're saying, right? It's like we can surrender, and like what greater pleasure is there, right, than to truly surrender to love in a relationship, or surrender into love. Yeah, and connection.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I love it.
I remembered what I'd wanted to say earlier, so I'm going to use that as my last point. We talked a lot about putting ourselves first, making sure that we're a resource. And I think that I can just feel some viewers out there going, no, that's selfish. We got to, take care of each other. And I just want to point out that the more that we are self-resourced, the more that we have put ourselves first, the more we can show up for our family, our friends, our community. We had talked about in the beginning how consent practice is social justice practice, pleasure practice, amazing sex life practice is social justice practice, because when we are out of whatever spin is taking most of our time, our unresourced places, our triggers and our traumas, when we don't have to live in there all day long, we can show up for ourselves. We could show up for our families, for our relationships, for our communities, and do that bigger work that so many of us want to do, but we're too fucking exhausted because we're just spinning all the time. So it is, self-pleasure, self-resourcing, self-awareness, taking care of oneself first is the way to start taking care of others more as well.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we are at the end of our conversation, all of you out there, and we are at the resource roundtable. And what that means, we like to do this consensually. So if you want to stick around and you want to hear what these gorgeous beings and myself are doing next and how you can work with us, then welcome. Thanks for staying and joining and hearing more. And if you don't feel like you want to be offered to right now, if you're like, no, I got it, thanks so much, then thank you so much for joining us. We're super honored and we're happy that you were here. All right. What are you all up to? What do you got? Any offers?
Yes. I can go first. I'm holding folks in a 6-month erotic alchemy container. It's one-on-one work. It's 18 sessions, and it's working with mindset, with pleasure through the erotic blueprints, and with emotional integration. And also support folks with things going on with their body to really open and support the nervous system to reach new layers of holding, of energy, of pleasure, of aliveness. So yeah, I've had 2 people say yes to this work in the last 2 weeks. And yeah, that is something that if anyone wants to really be held and witnessed, I know that being witnessed as we do these layers of excavation is so valuable and important. And it took me from struggling with my own triggers and traumas through decades to expanding and blooming in ways that I never dreamed were possible for me. I just so deeply believe in the power of presence and contact and full acceptance, full love, that people can shift and unleash their creativity, unleash their magic. A lot of folks fear the immensity of their erotic power. That's what I've seen a lot. It's like, if I open to that, how could my life change? And so to have someone who can show the way, who's several steps ahead and is like a full cheerleader. Like, I call myself a pleasure warrior. Like, I will fight for this revolution that we're in this cultural shift.
Woohoo!
And I believe everyone's erotic wholeness and power and pleasure is so important. So
Beautiful.
That's what I love, is just to be a stand for that in someone's life.
Great. Thank you, Fauna. And your information, Fauna's website is in the description above or below. Reach out to them to get more information on how to connect and see if that journey is the right fit for you at this time. Thanks so much.
Wow. Yeah, thank you.
I am also offering a 6-month one-on-one container, also 18 sessions focused on emotional regulation, mindset, and pleasure. And what I teach in those 6 months is really learning a 4-step process to meet yourself, right? To meet all of these inner aspects of yourself. It's basically a way, healing intimacy wounds, but also self-knowledge through somatic expressive techniques. And that is for all genders. And then I also have a collective healing space, a private online healing space called Revolutionary Rompereglas. And it's a place for women and non-binary folks to practice radical embodied devotion to their sexual life force energy. And it's a kink-friendly queer space. And we do embodied work, we do shadow work in a way that is playful, and we're really about dissolving shame in the body.
Gorgeous work. Yum. And Isha's contact information is also in the description, so reach out to them to see if that feels like a good fit for you all, if that sounds like something that you want to dive into exploring at this time. Thank you, Isha. Yeah, Lady Jen,
beautiful.
What's going on?
I feel so much warmth in my heart when I heard both of you offer, because I know I'm not the only one, and we have a community to promote erotic liberation and empowerment. So I have also have one-on-one container ranging from 4 months to 6 months, and that's where I help folks to gain clarity to the desire and access their body wisdom, and also learn erotic skills. So what I found is, for people who want to primarily focus on sexuality and intimacy, that's a great container. We can untangle what prevents them from getting the sex and love life they want, from the mindset level, from the body wisdom, and also from erotic skills level. And I also supported clients that, I really want to gain clarity in my career, and how can what I'm going to move next? And that's where the container provides them with clarity, with inner desire, and how to speak up their truth. Yeah, so that's, I find, regardless you want to primarily focus on intimacy or not, the life force and the empowerment you gain from the one-on-one work is tremendous. It can benefit every area in your life. Yeah.
Gorgeous work again. Look at these gorgeous beings. Wow. Okay, so Lady Jin's information is also in the description, so reach out to her if that feels right to you. And you all know what I'm doing. I'm helping you tap into, clarify, and communicate your desires so you can have that amazing sex life and the depth of intimacy that you want. And I'm using both the erotic blueprints as my toolkit, as well as all that yummy human potential world that I work with, which is the biohacking. You heard me talking about emotional, psychological, physical, all the things that influence us. That's that whole biohacking world. So I'm getting all my tools together to get you what you need to speak your desires and get heard and understood and yummy, deeply fulfilled. So check me out up there, and we will get you a free Passionate Possibilities call to get on the phone together and see if we feel like we're a good fit to work together. And I do both group and one-on-one coaching, and we work with whatever you need. If it feels like a good fit, to reach out. All right, everyone. What a gorgeous time here with all of you, both you all watching and you here on the call. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having us, Christina.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Ah, more pleasure. Yay. Well, as always, the invitation is empowerment. All you out there have a gorgeous, beauty-filled, pleasure-filled day.